Hello, welcome everybody coming at you live from New York. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, and we're so glad that you are here with us. My name's Dal Grunga, and I'm here with Achyuta Gopi. Welcome. Thanks for being here. How are you, Achyuta?
Better question is, how are you? How does 38 feel?
38 feels great.
Woohoo!
38 feels good. Yeah, it feels different than 37, that's for sure. 37 still feels you're kind of like in your mid 30s. 38 is definitely not mid 30s. You're like late 30s approaching 40. 37, I feel like you're still getting away from like I'm in my 30s. 38 is like I'm in my 30s, but not really. I'm kind of closer to 40.
My dad said on my last birthday, he's like, I can't believe I have a kid who's flirting with their 40s. And I was like, see, I'm taking that, using it for forever.
I'm flirting with my 40s for sure.
Exactly. It makes it sound so much better too.
My sister's 3 years older than me, and I called her. I was like, "You're already 40, right? You're 41." She's like, "Yes, thank you for reminding me." I was like, "I was just clarifying the age."
My brother is older than me. All of my siblings are older than me, so it's great.
How old's Ananta?
He is 8 years older than I am.
8 years older than you, and so you're 37, going on 38, right? So that
I'll be
makes him
well in May, but yeah,
he's 45.
he's old.
Man, but he's very youthful.
What do we see now? That's a failing. Like, what do we think 45 is? People had lives. I think, I think we kind of grew up in the generation of people who were still thinking that the life expectancy, like you hope for 100, but really people put a life expectancy at like 60 as though we all have
65.
the Black Plague.
Yeah.
And people are not living so long anymore.
And when somebody gets past 65, you're like, any that's it, any time now. It's like, really? And like, no, I actually got like a good 20, 30 years left.
I'm saying, like, come on. So
Yeah.
I think we've set it up in our minds where
But
life is over at a
not
certain
that
point.
45 is old. It's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying like he's very like Lent is one of those people who can be like, he's anywhere between 25 and 45.
My whole family's like that.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
I
And
can't go
so
anywhere and be taken seriously. It's so like usually if it's me and I'm traveling with my nephews and Nandi, there's usually somebody like, where did you get this child? Who is
yeah.
taking care of this child? What's happening? Like, how are you people traveling? No one ever
Yeah.
knows where to place us.
Yeah, like Ananta could be like with your nephews, he can be like their older brother of like 4 or 5 years, or he can be their uncle of 20 years.
Yeah, so we often just call them our little brothers because
Your little brothers. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm doing well. I'm doing great. 38 is good. Yesterday was good, and today's good. I exercised this morning.
wow.
Exercised this morning, feeling like I need to, preserve myself into my old age. Today is I told my wife I would put a prayer out there. Her father
Mm,
is having open heart surgery today in
wow.
Jersey. Came up suddenly. He had a stent. A
Mm.
stent, which is like a stent is a it's like a metal mesh tube that they put in your artery to kind of open up the artery to
Just
get
for all
kind
the
of
other,
blocked.
I already have a medical degree from Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, she has a medical degree from Grey's Anatomy. But if you haven't ever watched Grey's Anatomy, he had a stent and everything else seemed fine. And then he had like a little bit of heartburn and he went in to go check it out. And like they found out that like he had major clogs in like a number of arteries and he needed like he went in on like Thursday. He went in on like Friday and they're like, you need open heart surgery on Monday. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And so and at first it was gonna be but it's like it's like a triple bypass. He's having like a triple bypass surgery. Right now he's going into surgery. And
Wow.
so my wife asked to say, could you say a prayer for my
Mm,
dad? And I was like, I'll be on the podcast. So I'll ask everybody to. So he's going in today, and we'll see how that went, how that goes afterwards. It's like a
yeah.
3 4 hour surgery.
My dad had a few stints put in. So
Yeah.
It wasn't just my knowledge of of Grey's Anatomy, but
Mm,
also the first hand. Yeah,
yeah.
my dad had an emergency angioplasty and a few stents put in a few years ago,
Hmm.
and so we've had a number of family members who have also had heart things and bypasses. So totally get it.
The mystic at Radakun told me I need to check my cholesterol. There's a mystic at Radakun that can see into your life and tell you all about you by looking at your face. And he told me to check my cholesterol,
You know
which
who
I
else can
haven't
do
done.
that?
Which I haven't done. That. A doctor?
Sachinandan Swami.
Really?
Yeah, he also does like really amazing face reading,
Hmm.
and which is great if you've signed up for that. Not so great if you're just zoning out in his lecture because then he always knows.
Yeah.
But it's also been interesting to kind of like hear from him how heavy or troubling that kind of thing is. Like he's constantly feeling like he doesn't really fit
Yeah.
in, or like he can't, like he struggles with finding the best ways to relate to people without being like creepy, or without feeling like they're not being genuine when a lot of times we aren't.
Hmm.
And so then it's like, what do you do when you have all of that knowledge?
How do you behave around people when you can see through their soul?
Which is basically what Arjuna is asking in the Bhagavad Gita. See how we brought that around?
All right, that's our cue. Bhagavad Gita. Where are we in the Bhagavad Gita?
We were we were
We're in the
around.
second chapter. I know that. We've been in the second chapter for about 3 years now.
Actually, it's been a good time. I really feel like we should stop putting pressure on ourselves to rush through everything in life. Like it's like, oh my God, we got to get done.
Hmm.
For what? Like, what is the big reason? Especially because we've been having some really good conversations about it.
Totally. I feel
So
like we can
once
just go
it's
back and start over at the second chapter again.
I honestly, I don't even, it's like, I don't even mind because I think some of the best moments of my life are the ones where if I don't rush through it, I'm usually pleasantly surprised.
Hmm. Can't rush it.
So
Can't
but we
rush.
are on about like, um,
I don't feel like we're rushing it. We're reading like a verse a day. We sometimes don't even get to a verse a day. We were just having some conversations last week.
yeah, that was cool.
But
So,
we're around. If you're new here, we start off our podcast with a little bit of friendly banter, and then we make our way towards. Usually, it begins with me blabbing about something going on in my life, how old I am, what I did this morning for exercise, and then Achyuta brings it back to something substantial and spiritual. And then we read the Bhagavad Gita every day. We read the Bhagavad Gita every day because we need some form of spiritual connection, some form of realigning ourselves back to truth, because we live in a world where we're constantly being pulled away from ourselves and pulled away from truth. And so we need each other to help us out with that. So someone in the chat is saying 263, but we're
no,
past
yeah, we're
263.
about
I
265.
did 263 on my own when I went solo one day, and then we went back to 263 because those are some of Achuta's favorite verses. So we're at least 263, if not
We had done about, I think we
past that.
were around 265.
Okay. I'm gonna let you lead this off, Achuta.
So let's start. Actually, yeah, let's do 265 and 266 together.
All right, but let's not rush it.
For
Are
one
you gonna?
thus
Okay, she's gonna read.
satisfied. Yeah.
Why
So
don't you
Krishna,
lead this off? Okay, let me take over here.
so Krishna is still speaking to Arjuna. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. One who
Hmm.
is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, which there is no without which there is no possibility of peace, And how can there be any happiness without peace?
Mm. No, no peace, no happiness.
I mean,
No
and I
peace, no
know
happiness. Could be either one.
there are times when I've said, like, we're all in this pursuit of happiness so much that we put it in our laws for our country. But what does that really mean? And I think
Mm.
it's very cool that here Krishna is kind of alluding to what that happiness is. And I love that he's like, you're not, it's not going to be some like ethereal kind of thing. It's about finding a truer satisfaction than can be gained just interacting with all
Mm.
of the modes that are here. We're going to need
Mm.
something much more permanent. And once our consciousness is satisfied, our intelligence seems to calm down. You ever
Mm.
meet somebody and you have a really swift connection with them,
Mm.
but you don't know what is making that connection foster and grow, and why is this connection so deep? And when the intelligence is not satisfied by the answers that it brings up, you ever see people sabotage the connection
Mm.
just because they just can't understand why it is so deep, instead of allowing it to be deep and
Mm.
allowing it time to like reveal itself to as to why this connection is so deep? Our intelligence can sometimes do the worst for us if it isn't
Mm.
satisfied.
Mm. Ever had a time when your intelligence did the worst for you because it wasn't satisfied?
I feel like that's a thing that happens often.
Mm.
I feel like that's the thing that happens to any chronic overthinker. It's the overthinking of it. We've
Mm.
thought, I said what I said, and that was the most heartfelt thing to say in the moment. Not out of, like, sometimes we'll say things out of anger, sometimes we'll say things out of fear, but sometimes we say the most heartfelt thing we could. And then we overthink, we second guess ourselves, and that second guessing turns into third guessing, turns
Mm.
into, and usually we wind up saying, I should have just listened to my gut.
Mm.
Which now here, it's like we're finding the difference between our intelligence and our consciousness.
Mm. Yeah, I think because I was looking here in the Sanskrit, the word sometimes it's interesting to look at the English translations that are taking place from the actual Sanskrit words that are being used in the original text, and when it's making transcendental intelligence. Because I think of sometimes we think of intelligence like as your IQ, like your ability to just work with numbers and your ability to do engineering or neuroscience, like a certain type of intelligence and intellectualism, an ability to grasp concepts. But here, the word transcendental intelligence is used as a translation of the word buddhi, which really means wisdom, or like one's deep inner knowing. And so I think that inner knowing, so much. I mean, so we live in, Prabhupada would use this word very often about like a godless society, and how often it is that we talk about um, figuring things out, or spending time alone with yourself, etc. But in the yoga tradition, the idea of going inward and spending time with yourself really is to recognize that actually, like, there's a constant eternal companion that we're meant to get in touch with. And that buddhi, that internal wisdom, that transcendental intelligence isn't just like an acumen of the brain. It is a connection of the heart where that Paramatma, that super soul lives and resides. And so therefore it mentions here one who is not connected with the supreme, that supreme person in Krishna consciousness, that higher being, that higher power. You cannot have that transcendental intelligence. It's not something that we're ever just going to get on our own. It's not like, by reading books and by listening to enough podcasts, you're going to like have this type of higher intelligence. But it's actually when you connect with that inner knowing that's guiding you, and having that steady mind. Because what's an unsteady mind? An unsteady mind is anything that flashes in front of me, I reach out for it. Anything that's calling me, I have to respond to it. It sounds like you're going to say something.
I was looking at the word for word transliteration, which is something that is very unique to Srila Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm.
You actually don't get this in a lot of other, even bhakti yoga traditions. You
Mm,
don't have a transliteration word for word. You
not
have,
often.
yeah, you have what the text is, and then you have the translation. You'll have a commentary, but you don't necessarily always get an actual word
Mm,
for word, kind of like your own little dictionary of Sanskrit terms. The verse before, because I just wanted to see like what are we, Krishna's talking about for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, but the first word is prasade, on
mm.
achievement of the causeless mercy of the Lord. All of the material miseries seem to make their destruction. Like, how amazing is that?
Read
So
that again.
we have, it's like, so we have prasade, on achievement of the causeless mercy of the Lord, sarva, of all, dukhanam, material miseries, hanihi, destruction.
I was in
So
verse
not
66. That's
just,
why I was losing you. You're on
yes,
65.
yes, I went back to 65 where we first started.
Got it.
So we have,
Mm,
for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, but really it's on achievement of the causeless mercy of the Lord. It's like all material miseries meet their destruction, which is gorgeous. And
mm,
I like how Srila Prabhupada simplified it because there were so many people who had no idea about what a Krishna was, who a Krishna was, any of this. And so, in giving a culture, he made it very broad. But the more that we are involved in Krishna consciousness, you can kind of feel like Bhagavad Gita is rudimentary because it's been called almost the ABCs of Bhakti Yoga. It's the foundation teachings of Bhakti Yoga. Then you
mm,
have Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered like collegiate study. Then you have Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is considered postgraduate study. So
mm,
sometimes you can think for an established bhakti yogi or someone who has been studying this for so long, do the fundamentals still have something for us? And
mm,
I grew up with a family teacher who encouraged us to remember that there are so many jewels hidden within all of these books. It's up to us. We just have to dive deep and get to them. And
mm,
this, I feel like, is one such jewel. It's not even deep within the Bhagavad Gita.
mm,
But upon achieving the causeless mercy of the Lord, all of our material miseries will meet their destruction.
mm. And I love how he mentions in such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established, because I think also the way that Buddha here, the way that wisdom is applied is it gives us a context of how to respond to what happens to us in the world. Because when it mentions miseries are destroyed, what we don't see is that quote unquote bad things stop happening to people. But like, what is the definition of misery? It's not what happens to me externally, it's the internal experience of how I process that thing to be of suffering. Like I love Richard Rohr, who defines suffering as, some material pain or discomfort. Some material discomfort is called pain, but a sense of injustice associating with that pain is called suffering. A sense of like it shouldn't be this way, or things should be different, or this was some sense of feeling like um a disagreement with this pain in some ways, you can say. And so I think that the idea of a satisfied consciousness of misery going away, I'm no longer having this mental wrestling match with the circumstances of my life, and I'm actually learning to I become more accepting, I become more internal, I become more reflective, and I rather than resisting or wrestling with the circumstances of my life, I actually am partnering with that inner higher power to understand, how is this, how do you want me to see this? How do you want me to grow through this? How do you want me to use this? How is this in the prayers of Queen Kunti that we were talking about often last week? How is this bringing me closer to you? Because that's ultimately, again, the whole first part of the second chapter is about the eternal nature of the soul, right? So it's like, how do, and the process of yoga is to connect or reconnect that eternal soul back to source. And so if the goal of my life is to connect my body and my senses and my mind to the sense objects of this world, then I'm going to experience a certain level of suffering or disappointment or grief or misery when things don't go my way. But if the goal is I want to connect my soul back to source, then I start to process things in a very different way. And my definition of misfortune, misery, of chaos starts to shift.
I was watching, there was a video. There was a little girl, and she was crying because the leaves were falling off the trees.
Mm,
And she couldn't have been more than 3. And she was, it was like, it wasn't like a tantrum cry. It was the most like little heartbreaking kid cry ever, because she just kept going.
mm,
She's like, but I promised them. I promised them that I promised the leaves I would meet them every day. And if they fall off, I
mm.
can't meet them. And then she kept going, it's all my fault, Daddy.
Oh,
And so the first thing I thought was, I was like, I'm really glad this is not my child, because if this was my child, we're moving. We are moving to a place where the leaves don't
where the
fall
leaves
off.
don't fall.
We are moving. But also, I started to realize, I'm like, that's us. If we are connecting ourselves to the most impermanent things here, it's all our fault.
Mm,
I promised this person I would be there. I promised this person they would be here for this. I promised I would see them through so and so. And during the natural course of things, sometimes these are promises we have
mm,
no right to make, because nature still does what nature does. And the dad
mm,
was trying to explain to her, this is not your fault, it's just nature. Of course, she's not able to understand that at all. But this is us as souls. Krishna is now trying to understand, but this is nature. This place here, this is the nature of this place. It is
mm,
impermanent. There is going to be tumultuous situations because of the impermanence of this place. And the more that you connect yourself, the more that you put all of your stock into this impermanence, the more frustrated and sad and guilt ridden you will feel. Because you'll feel like, I should have been able to stop this. And I'm
mm,
telling you that it's nature. And so
mm,
sometimes that gets really so heartbreakingly difficult when it's not leaves, but it's actual people with hearts and lives and intelligence and consciousness.
mm,
And we always feel like, well, no one's doing anything, but that's not true. It can't be always and never. There's always someone doing something. It
mm,
may not feel like enough, but we also need to know that there are 2 kinds of intelligence. And intelligence is just a way that we process information and what's happening around us. So we have this gross intelligence, as not gross like ew, but gross as in heavy handed intelligence. This is what every one of my senses is feeling. This is what I can touch. This is what I. And then we have a more subtle intelligence. We have our consciousness. We have that
mm,
intuition, which is not just for a specific few, it is for everyone. It just
mm,
depends on how much we are honing that intelligence to process what's happening to us on an outer level. And then we start to realize that the trees that I promised may not be looking to me for that promise either. It's not my
mm,
fault. It is nature.
mm,
Now, what do we do now that we've processed that? How
mm,
do we conduct our lives? And this is what Krishna is giving us a handbook for.
Mm, I love it. Handbook. I really, really appreciate that. And if none of that works out for you, we can definitely still move. There's Florida, California. There's beautiful places where the leaves don't fall. Kimberly, what kind of takeaways you got for us today? Kimberly is our taker awayer. She's going to summarize a few things for us, and we're going to have some closing words before we send you all off on the rest of your day.
Thank you. Today we're taking away that we can connect to the inner knowing and constant eternal companion within us rather than wrestling with the circumstances of our lives. And then our perception of impermanence and suffering shifts when we connect back to source.
Or say that last one again.
Our perception of impermanence and suffering shifts when we connect back to source.
That's a great one. Somebody mark that one. That's a social media post.
That's absolutely the commentary. It's like modern day commentary of exactly what Krishna is saying in that verse. Really well done, Kimberly.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Closing word, Achyuta?
I really like that last one, that our perception of material suffering and impermanence shifts once we connect. And then I want to allow that perception to shift. I have a
Mm,
habit of clinging too stubbornly
mm,
to what I thought, even when I have an idea that it's changing or it's
mm,
shifting.
mhm,
Now I want to allow it to change.
mhm. Totally. Um, I'm holding on to that one too. Holding on to that one also. Um, hmm, what I experienced to be fortune or misfortune, how that shifts depending upon my connection to source. And that's really what I'm looking to do, connect myself back to source. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Thank you all to all of our listeners, our live Zoomers, as well as everyone tuning in from wherever you are around the world. Thank you for all those who've been writing to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. A few of you have just been saying, hi, I'm here. And I appreciate always hearing from you guys. If you want to write your story or ask a question or get in our WhatsApp group, you can write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. And we love you and we're grateful for you. And we will see you all again very soon. Take care, everybody, and bye-bye.